Hey everyone, welcome back to the another video on APIs. In this lesson, we're going to be talking about how to format your API requests. Mm, by the end of the lesson, you'll understand what's the endpoints and what are the parameters and what are the query parameters and how can you format and changes your API request. What we have seen this far so far is we built for front end for our website and backend for our website, that is your server, and and they can be interacted with each other through the requests and responses for our responses. Our front end might make a get request to our backend, and in return, for example, you wanted to open a different web page, so they would make an get request and your server would send back some with code and some data, maybe that can go into your EJS file. Here you go. This, if you think about it, is effectively hitting a private API. Now, the reason why it is private because you don't document it for other people to use. Your server is exclusively serving your own front end, and it's not somebody else's. However, if somebody else's knew how your server was structured and try to hit it up, that would be tapping into your private APIs, and people do in fact do this if there's some sort of strong reason to do that. Now, normally, however, what you're interested in doing is hitting your server to talk to somebody else's server to get some data or do something and interact with the servers in some sort of way, and this is again done using request and response, but this time it's done via public API. Let me show you. Here you go. This done by a public API, and it's public because this particular server has allowed this kind of behavior. So they probably documented how to use their public API. They've exposed certain parts of their server to anybody who wanted to request it, and that is what we are learning about all about in this module: how to use public APIs. Now we create an API for you. Actually, that's not mine. There's an API which will help us to learn the endpoints, path parameters, and query parameters. Let me show you. Here we go. Let's go to the this website. I mean the API. To go there, it's board API appbroad.com. Let's go to the browser. Board API dot appbroad.com. Guess this will work. Yep. Came to the web page. Let's hide this asshole. Uh, Here you can see there's a whole bunch of data on what you could do, how many participant requires, and it's free, and it's cost nothing. And but if you take a look at the documentation by going to the board, you will see some documents. Here you go. There's a documentation, and that can do with public APIs. The first thing that I wanted to introduce you is API endpoints. So let's discuss how API endpoints does work. Uh, Normally, you have a basic URL. Here you can see this was the URL of API something and something. Then you will have a forward slash. Here you go, and an endpoint. This one's the endpoint. That one is a random activity. This endpoint can be different for different purposes. Let me show you. Here's an activity. In this case, the endpoint is filter, and let's go here. Here's a endpoint is activity. This was all the documentation that we got. For example, in our board API, there's random endpoint where you can hold a random activities. Here you can see with your board, and there's a filter here over. You can see when you wanted to filter the activities based on some sort of criteria, and the endpoint is basically a different route on the API provider service server. And in this documentation they will usually give you an example of which endpoint you can use and what is the purpose of that endpoint. Hmm, I'd like to show you how the format is. Let me notepad. The format is like this: your base URL and forward slash and endpoint. In our case, the base URL is https board api.appbrewery.com, and endpoint is something, some endpoint. This is the syntax for that to access the endpoint, whatever. I hope you guys understand. Let's go ahead and try an exercise on the postman. So the exercise is: make an API request via Postman to get random activity. Every time we send, we'll get a random activity. Let's go to Postman. Here, we're gonna use get request, and let's see the documentation. Here you can see to get the random activity every time we press send or enter, we get a random activity. So that we're gonna use random endpoint. Here you can see. Let's copy this and paste over here. Let's send. Mm, taking time. Looks like it's working. Okay. The first activity is shop at support your local farmers market, and availability type, participants price, either duration, link, key, and again I send the request, and I got to get music festival. Here you go. Every time we sending, we're getting the random activity. So we successfully did our first exercise, and the next aspect of structure. I hope you guys have understand what are the API endpoints. Let me API endpoints. May this document may help you to understand what are the API endpoints are. Every API, I mean, every API server. that will give us a documentation to understand how to do things. This is like a menu, and I've already discussed it in the previous video though. And the next thing I'm going to discuss about is query parameters. So we've already seen an endpoint comes at the end of the base URL, right? End of the base URL, and end of the base URL. And then afterward, we can add a question mark. Let me show you. Maybe it'll be nice if I copy it. Okay. Why was you still? Here you go. Now after the endpoints, we're gonna add a two for the query parameters. Add question mark, and to say we are adding a query now to the end of the request. To say that we are adding a query to the end of the request. Let me see. The query is like you start off all the requests with the question mark, and then we basically just a key value pair. It's just basically a key value pair where this is name of the query, and then you have equal sign, and then you provide value for the query. Let me show you. Here you go, question mark, and next thing is query equal to value. And it's basically a way of putting the key and value pair into the URL when you wanted to provide some additional information or some parameter to request. Normally, when you are hitting up an API, they're they're used for filtering, sorting, searching, and you can even have multiple query parameters by simply adding and an ampersand after the first query. Let me show you. Ampersand and a query e- equal to value, and you can add multiple ones. So query equal to value. This does works. Base URL, API, and query equal to value, and query equal to value, and query equal to value. So this is the syntax for the query parameters and multiple query parameters. If you wanted to, okay, everything's fine. Let's make an exercise. Make an API request through the postman that queries all the social activities for two people. Here you can see. Let's see the documentation. Here you can see the question is make an API request to the postman that queries all the social activities. The type of the activities are social, and participants are two people. So let's do this. Here you can see the type equal to this one is query and this one is value. I hope you guys understand. Let's do this. First thing first, we're gonna copy this one. Copy. Let's hit another one. We're getting right. Let's paste it here. You can see type education came over here, and we want social, right? And ampersand sign. See ampersand symbol, and we want participants. Make sure you're not making any typos. If you do, we got nothing. Hmm. Participants. I guess this is participant for two. Let's send. Here you go. Too many requests. Please try again later. Easy is a joke. What does it even mean? Looks like we're out of requests. Hmm. Filter and type social and the next thing is participants. Participants to I wish I'll get. Here you go. Is what it was saying. Too many requests. Please try again later. It looks like we're out of requests. Too many requests. 429. The user has sent too many requests in a given amount of time intended for use with rate limiting schemes proposed in an internet draft. Let's go over here. Here you can see welcome to the board API App Brewery. This teaching tool for students to the App Brewery. API requests are limited to 100 requests every 15 minutes. Looks like I've already done. So, guys, I guess we're not gonna get the experience we want. Let's open the app again. Postman. Hmm. Here you can see random endpoint were working fine, but we're not unable to. This one's working not well. I guess there must be some mistake I've done over here. Let's see the document. Looks like we get that one. Yeah, we get that. Here you can see types were social to everyone. Every activity we got, and participants were two. There were total for five activities over here. So this was working fine. Guess there was some bug or some internet issue, I guess. So the very last structure that I want you to be familiar with is something called path parameters. Let's go to the documentation. Path parameters. So after the base URL, let's go to the here. Let's copy this again. I guess this one's useless now. I have already known this one's the base URL, right? This one's base URL. And now we're going to talk about path parameters. So after the base URL, let's write URL. Normally comes with an endpoint, but endpoint is usually fixed path, so it will be random, and then endpoint is never going to change. It's always going to be random, spelled in the way. But we can also have known filter, something called path parameters, where after the forward slash, let's go here, endpoint after forward slash, we can add some sort of parameters that does change, and this is usually to find out some specific resource that exists. So it could be an id, Let me show you. Here you can see maybe an ID or key or username. It's basically something that's very specific that can identify the resource in the API, unlike query parameters. Uh, like query parameters, when it could be multiple things like participants type, other different types of participants. So I want you to think about query parameter as more filtering and searching and path searching, and the path parameters more for identifying a resource by some specific parameter. That one's only one. Let me show you. After that, there was a parameter. Specific వేలో చెప్తా. Path parameter. This one's a structure. So let's tackle an exercise. Um, Notice that when we look at all activities that we got back, they all have a unique key, and they're usually some sort of ID or key for each resource when identifying its uniquely. So there's no other activities with the key or with ID. We can use the path parameters, the key, in order to retrieve a specific activity. Example, if on your web, you know that you always wanted to display to the user the first activities as Learn Express. Here you can see Learn Express. Then you can simply retrieve it by identifying its specific key. Here you can see specific key. For example, I've already know the key for hosting a movie is 5914292. Let's provide a key as a path parameter to query for the specific activity. So the structure will be, let me show you, base URL and point, and here you go. The key is 5914292. Whenever you enter this, we get the specific activity that is named as host movie hosting. So let's start that. Let's go to the postman. We have already know this one's basic base URL, and next one is the endpoint. We want endpoint that named activity. You can see this one for filter activities. To get activities, we want get a specific activity, and this one's the key. Hope you guys understand. Activity. Next one is the number I said. I mean key value 59149244292. Okay, this will do. Let's send. Here you can see we get the host movie marathon for some friends. Whatever, it's working fine. And if we wanted to get this particular one, Learn Express, there's a key 39, and let's copy this. Paste it over here. Here you go. We get the Learn Express JS, and we successfully ran the three of them. Those were the very important, HTTP requests to get the output from the server or the API, someone else's server. Let me tell you a few things. And guys, so I wanted to notice something that is very important. Here you can see Notice that with most public APIs that don't require authentication, there's usually some method to prevent people from abusing the resource. So in our case, the Abroad added a rate. I mean, that you can only make. You can see it added a limit. Sorry, it added a limit so that you can only make 100 requests every 15 minutes. So be aware of that. There must be some catch while we are using an APIs or some, like to save our so to save themselves. So that's it for today, guys. I hope you guys understand the APIs. Different. I hope you guys have understand the endpoints and path parameters and query parameters and the format and how to change the API requests. So we learned about endpoints, we learned about query parameters, and we also learned about the path parameters. In the next lesson, we're going to learn a little bit more about the structure of data that comes back from the API request. And when it comes to web APIs, the format is usually a JSON. So we're going to be learn all about that, what it is, and how to use it, and in our code. So for all and more, I'll see you there.